Of it. Running the floor. Embiid stuffs it.
Harden for three. James Harden with his second triple.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. It is Friday, actually. We've had some early action this week. We got a little up and coming thing today. Sean, you wanna preview this really quick?
So second half of this podcast will be an interview I had with Nik Stauskas, which was very cool. Awesome guy, exciting listen. So make sure to stay in tune for that. I was very happy to have him on and hoping to get more of that moving forward. So it was very cool.
Yeah, our guy Sauce Castillo joined the pod, which is really awesome. Currently a Celtic, which isn't as cool, but definitely had some interesting things. I wasn't part of it, so I'm super excited to hear it as well. I haven't gotten a chance to listen quite yet, but I'm going to be throwing the audio in, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to recap last night, talk about the Raptors loss, what that looks like in the future, considering there's a looming playoff matchup going forward in a couple of weeks. Before we get started today, we want to thank our sponsor, BetUS, one of the leading sportsbook and casinos in the market. They just had a player props. If you guys want to join us in the action, you can use our code PICKSWAP at login to get your first bet risk-free up to $500. That's code PICKSWAP at login. So Sean, let's talk about last night. An annoying loss, another blown lead. This one didn't feel as much of like the blown lead-ish because it happened in the first half.
Yeah.
I even jokingly said to my friends, all right, at least they got the blown lead out of the way early tonight. Unfortunately, they weren't able to really get back out to a big lead, and the Raptors beat the Sixers by 5. What happened? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, it's right off the rip, the Sixers were just shooting the lights out of the ball. Maxey had 3 early threes. Tobias had 2. They really just could not miss early on, and that was kind of what led to jumping out to a lead. And the Raptors found a way to crawl back in. It's very frustrating. Like last night itself, to me, obviously it's one game regular season tailing down. It doesn't really matter that much in the scheme of things, but it's once again like the way kind of things happen, and especially with the looming playoff matchup, which it seems very likely that it's going to be the Raptors. If the Celtics lose their last game and the Sixers win their last 2, they could still hop up to third, in which case they would play the Bulls, which I would much prefer that matchup over the Raptors. But if that does not happen, Sixers will have a 7-game series with the in Toronto. That will bring up the Matisse issue and everything with that, and the Doc Rivers versus Nick Nurse matchup is not one I feel remotely good enough. So it's definitely a larger concern just based on how last night went. Saw B-Ball Paul get out the mud, but Sixers are still in it.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, it's kind of one of those games that it just feels like this happens, and it happens too much. Like the Sixers are just so much more talented, top to bottom than the Raptors. The Raptors pose some problems though. Like I want to first give credit to Toronto. They do a fantastic job. First of all, they constantly switch up looks. I don't know if you caught it. They mentioned it on the broadcast. Like they have 3 guys behind their bench that stand up and hold up signs with numbers on them. Basically after every stoppage or every made basket, and they have defensive coverages that are based off of those numbers. It's literally like, on a defense in football, when they're holding up the big signs and giving that, that's what they're doing. So they have a really complicated and, intricate system that they run. They go into full court press, back into zones. They basically line up across the free throw line and don't let Embiid attack off the dribble at all. And he had a quote unquote bad game and still had 30 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I want to give credit to Toronto because they do a really great job. There was at one point where their smallest player on the court was Siakam, or who's 6'8". So they just have guys that are lengthy, athletic, aggressive. Like I wrote last night, the Toronto kind of embodies everything that the Sixers are not. Fast break, intricate, developed offense, athletic,
long.
Just running all over the place, flying all over the place. Offensive rebounds is constantly a problem, keeping them off the boards. They turned the ball over 6 more times than the Raptors. The Sixers only scored 3 points off of turnovers, and it was a Maxey steal and 3. and Toronto had 15 points off of turnover. Like there's your game right there, you know? So I don't know. It was frustrating because it's just like you're better than them, but it's clear that they're doing all the things that the Sixers are not doing to win basketball games. Like the Sixers are like, we're really good. We have really good players. We're just going to do what we do. And the Raptors are like, here's what we have to do to win. And then they do those things and they win. So, you know, I'm not like the Sixers are definitely better than the Raptors. I'm just concerned about that aspect of the game if it comes to a playoff series.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at like you talked about with the team stuff, like the Sixers shot unsustainably high last night. They shot 49% from the field and 52.8% from three. Like that doesn't happen on an every game basis, and they lost the game. The Raptors attempting 16 more shots is crazy because of the reasons you said: the turnovers, the offensive rebounds. The Raptors had 12 offensive rebounds last night, which is another thing that isn't an uncommon problem for the Sixers, but frustrating nonetheless. And James Harden, like I'm I'll start off with I've been pretty optimistic and pretty like long leash on the view of James Harden. He's still the most important role for him in the Sixers offense is as a playmaker, setting people up, making passes, and he ended with 15 assists last night. He still did a very good job doing that. But with that being said, there's this like section of looks that has been missing in the Sixers offense for so long. Like they haven't had that like go get a bucket guy. And these looks are just carved out for James Harden. And he's simply not making it happen. Like they were ugly one. Like the one turnover where he drove in the lane, he could not beat Achua. Siakam was right there, and he ended up just losing the ball, flailing his arms and looking for the foul, which is very common. Like the step to actually get by to make a bucket is not going to be there against this Toronto team in the playoffs for sure. Because of the reasons we talked about with their length, with their athleticism, those are not winnable matchups for James Harden at this stage in his career. And I mean, just looking at 3 of 12 shooting, 1 of 4 on threes. The 3 of 12 shooting is brutal. There's doesn't seem to be any kind of semblance of mid-range game. The layups look ugly sometimes. The floaters look ugly pretty much all the time. And I when the trade happened, I was pretty bought into this is the long-term investment. Like this is you've made the decision to ink him up long-term by making this trade. It's a lot more difficult of a decision to make than I think it initially was. And I don't know. This could all change coming in the playoffs if he gets hot and plays better, but there are some real concerns, and it continues to keep growing in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They're gonna give him the money. They're gonna give him a long-term deal. Like I think we should all kind of come to grips with that because like kind of like what you said. Like they made that decision when they traded for him. And goes to say like 15 assists. He's averaging over 10 assists per game as a Sixer. Like he's been fantastic in facilitating the basketball. But yeah, man, the scoring's just not there right now. Like he can't score 13 points in a game. Like he just can't. There just has to be more. Like he has to sit around 18. And I don't think that's unattainable, like at all. Like I don't think that's a lot to ask. 3 of 12 from the field.
Danny Green scored 18 points last night.
Danny Green, and we're gonna talk about that because there's some wrinkles to that. Danny Green was very good last night.
My bad.
But yeah, like I think 18 to 20 points like is something you should expect from James Harden, a guy that like at one point was averaging 36 points per game in a season. He's a scorer. He's a natural born scorer. It's what it was his best attribute for the majority of his career. The jumper just isn't falling. He's not creating the space. I mean, but there's sometimes like there was 2 or 3 times last night he hit a crossover and got open and then gets to the middle and everyone collapses and it's just like he doesn't know what to do. Like it doesn't look like he knows what to do from there. The floater's not falling. He's not getting to the rim. There's just like a lack of explosiveness, and it's worrisome if that's the injury lingering. And if that is like if he's injured right now, he shouldn't have to play against Indiana and Detroit to end the season. Like his regular season should be done. If he is dealing with an injury right now, he should be done. I don't really care about the rest. At worst, you're going to be the 4 seed. It's locked in, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to not be the 4 seed. And you should beat the freaking Pacers who like have rolling out guys that I don't even know who they are. Like they're starting players that I had to look up the other night to be like, who's this? Where did he go to school? Where is he? When did he get drafted? Like that's bad if you have to like really say, oh, we need James Harden in these last 2 games to win, or Embiid.
Yeah.
LeBron just said he was out. I just got a notification. He's done for the year. So the scoring title is going to be Embiid's. Like they should chill and just relax.
I think the more important part of it is building the chemistry of him keeping to get a better understanding and just things clicking better offensively as a team with him in there, because they're still work in progress. I've still seen some super positive strides. Just looking at the volume of 3-point shots in these past few games
Yes.
is a tribute to James Harden setting up, to the Morey ball offense kind of being put in effect. The pace has picked up. These are all very positive things that Harden deserves credit for helping with the change, along with everybody. But I think that's kind of the reasoning for continuing to keep him on the court. And my other larger thing is whether it is the hamstring or age, like neither way it changes by playoffs. Like neither way is this is a
True.
couple days off and it's better. And there really is like such a lack of explosiveness. Like there's some of the floaters, I feel like he doesn't even lift off the ground. Like he just pretty much stands there and pokes it. And it's just, I don't know. It doesn't look pretty and it doesn't fall either, which is not what we're looking for.
Yeah, but I mean that was not the case his first handful of games here.
Yeah.
His first 5 games, like the ball was flying around, he was attacking, he was aggressive, and like that's also another part of it when I'm thinking about it. And I don't know how to like really gauge this. It's hard to understand where he is, physically and mentally. But there is even a play like late in the game last night. There was a rebound that came off. Like it was in the last like possession. Like they weren't gonna win. But he like he definitely could have gotten the offensive rebound, but he like walked over and like gave a half-assed like swing at the ball, like a swipe. I'm like, to me, it kind of looks like he's a little bit checked out of the regular season. And like,
Yeah.
I don't like that per se, but it doesn't like if there's more to James Harden going into the playoffs and what we're getting right now is like the half-assed version and he's still getting like 13 and 15 nights, like that's okay.
Yeah.
Obviously we're gonna have a better idea of that come playoff time. And this is an ugly matchup for the Sixers, like kind of what we highlighted earlier. Like this isn't a great head-to-head matchup. Like the Sixers are better than the Raptors. They should beat them in a series, and genuinely I do think they would. um and they will if they play them. But that doesn't say that I don't dislike the matchup. Specifically, now we can talk about Matisse. So the weirdest kind of I don't even know, like kind of figuring out that Matisse is unvaccinated.
Yeah.
One, very surprising, just very surprising on his end for, everything that he's stands for. He seems like as a person, he seems like he would be, pro-vaccine. And, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to put ourselves into any political, alignment here. But the way that he is, I just assumed that he was vaccinated. And it was
Yeah.
reported earlier this season that he was vaccinated. It makes sense now. He contracted COVID 2 different times. But now, in a series against Toronto, Matisse is not going to be able to play for a certain amount of those games. And you can see, as a long athlete who's aggressive and defensive and does a lot of things that the Raptors do, he's the only guy on the Sixers that really matches that type of energy and athleticism. So, it does hurt to not have him around. Is it the end of the world? Probably not. But it definitely, is good to have him. So, like, what do you see from that situation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more bodies, the better, specifically in the wing category, because the Sixers are light there. I guess my biggest takeaway from this is it not having Matisse reveals like the roster mismanagement that's happened this year, and
Yeah.
to now be going into a series with Danny Green, and Danny Green is your only like for sure playable wing, and with like Furkan Korkmaz, who it's been a roller coaster this season with him, but to have him pretty likely having to play playoff minutes, it's crazy that we're carrying 4 backup centers for the guy who's our best player, and like knowing this was a possibility on the Sixers and that there wasn't like it's very frustrating that there isn't more. It isn't more well-rounded, and I just disagree with the logic of getting 4 backup bigs for your best player. Who like if Embiid gets hurt, it's over anyway. It doesn't matter how good your backup's over. Everything
Yeah.
changes with that. So to me, I don't see the point in carrying all these extra numbers there. And I mean, it's very clear like a wing, athletic wing who can shoot, play defense would be so impactful. And Matisse does a lot of those things, not all of them. Uh, I don't know. It definitely hurts. Like Matisse is probably the best athlete on this entire roster, and to be without him against an uber athletic team definitely is a hit. I do think it's a series where schematically it's not one where he fits in like heavily. So I guess that's kind of a pro. Like I don't think this would be a series where he'd be averaging 30 minutes a game like he does in some matchups. This is going to be one where he's kind of schemed out good because of the defensive things by Nick Nurse and spacing the floor, all those issues. So I guess if it had to happen to a team, like the Raptors aren't a bad matchup, but it sucks that this is the position that the Sixers are in.
Yeah, I mean, it also like to mention, and something we didn't really mention is that the Raptors were without their two best players
Yeah,
like last night, or two of their three best players. Fred VanVleet he was an all-star,
he's
and
very
OG
good. Yeah,
Anunoby is also very good, a guy that I like a lot, and a fantastic defensive player, and a guy that is probably going to be locked on Harden. When you think about it, he's probably going to be the guy that's defending James Harden in a series. So, there's a lot more to it that I think a lot that some people are missing. Kind of to your point, Sean, it seems almost like irresponsible by Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers in the front office to have not gotten another wing, have not traded or picked one up, or whoever it is. It's kind of insane now because they definitely knew.
right.
This isn't a surprise it's a surprise to us, and we were already saying how kind of absurd it was to have four backup centers. Um, when your best player is a center. And now that we find out that one of the wings and actually your starting small forward is potentially going to be out in a playoff series for three of the games potentially, and you just decided Paul Millsap is worth a roster spot because on nights where DeAndre Jordan doesn't get minutes, which was good to see, um, Paul Millsap's not the replacement. Like, why is Paul Millsap on this team? I guess I prefer him over DeAndre Jordan. I guess I do. But that doesn't matter. Like, Doc is going to play DJ when he can, when he's like allowed to. And if he can't, he's going to go to Reed, which I think I mean, I don't know. It's different conversation for a different day. We don't have too much time. But it doesn't make sense. Matisse, like you said, it's not the end of the world. I don't think. I think there's,
Yeah,
they should still win this series. They're a better team, top to bottom. But like not having him and just finding that out in the kind of the whirlwind that the way that we found out was very surprising to me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do want to give Danny Green some love because
Yeah.
I'm a pretty pro Danny Green guy, which at times has been rough to stay in that position. But
Yeah.
anyway, 18 points, 6 of 7 from 3,
Wow.
5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. That's absolutely crazy Danny Green night. And like 2 of the threes late in the fourth quarter were shots he had no business even attempting. Yeah, the one he
Threw one.
Marcus Page UNC shot looking like, but the way they fell, the way they went in. So shout out to him for staying ready. I do really like the look of the offense with him in it. I've been hammering down for Embiid and 4 shooters for his entirety of his career, and it's worked better with Matisse than I've expected it to be honest. But I do think it makes a lot of sense to have Danny Green be that fifth guy. It makes sense that the Sixers tried it this way, and like it's way easier to just transition to Danny Green than it would be to transition from Danny Green to Thybulle. So obviously Thybulle got the first dibs at it, and he has, to Thybulle's credit, been fairly impactful offensively. He's not allowed his limitations to be too big of a deal, but once again, things are more exposed in playoffs. Every weakness is put on a bigger scale in the playoffs. So I have concerns that happens with Matisse. Danny's been injured for most of this year. So I guess my optimistic view is that he has some gas left in the tank for the playoffs specifically. And if that's the case, a Danny Green at his best is a very huge asset for the Sixers team.
Yeah. And like the thing, I like Thibault off the bench as well. When you think about defensively,
Yeah.
how bad the Sixers can be on the bench unit. And something I would also love, it's something obviously that Doc probably won't end up doing, but if he likes to run Harden with the bench unit, and run the pick and roll with DeAndre Jordan. I would love to see him put Paul Reed out there, kind of similar to what we saw last night, which makes a really switchable defense if you have Harden, Thibault, Paul Reed, because Harden switches onto bigs very well.
Yeah.
Thibault obviously switches out, can guard all over. Paul Reed does a really good job both in the paint and on the outside. He was. We can talk about him more just in a second, but I would love to see that as kind of like the fast-paced, running all over the place, setting screens, flying down the court, long passes, like that type of offense. I think would just be way more effective. With Harden at the helm than like a slow ass DeAndre Jordan. Wait for him to get his ass up the court, set a screen. It might not work. Rescreen, try to run the you know what I mean. It just seems like it might create like a more open and aggressive offense, but. I don't know. I like DG in the starting lineup. I was kind of against it for a while. I liked Matisse in the starting lineup. I still don't mind it, but kind of to your point, like I don't think you can take him out of the starting lineup after that game. And honestly, I think he kind of the fit seems to be a little bit better. And Matisse can come right off the bench and be the sixth man. Like that's
Yeah.
no big deal. You know what I mean? I don't mind that at all. Before we go into this interview with Nik Stauskas, which we want to give as much time as possible, just go through Paul Reed, his game last night. And if you think, obviously we all think he should probably get more minutes and definitely over DeAndre Jordan, but just make a case again.
Yeah, I mean, it was the full Paul Reed experience last night. We saw the good
Yeah.
and the bad. His effort and motor is just an asset to the Sixers team. Like, they just don't have that. And obviously, there's growing pains with him. We saw it last night. They were there. But the frustration from my end is, like, these are growing pains that we could have started to get over a long time ago. Like, he's not going to be a polished player by not playing for so long, being tossed in there. But I do think, like, if there was a more plan put in place to develop him and allow this to happen, like, he could be for sure an effective player. And even last night, there's things that he did that were helpful for the team. And he ended 11 minutes, 5 points, 7 rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds, and a steal. 1 turnover. He was a minus 13, which the Raptors got hot during the stretch he was in, a couple 3-pointers in a row. So I don't think that properly replicates it. But I don't know. I just believe that Paul Reed, especially in a matchup with like the Raptors, when we're talking about the length and athleticism, what a big factor that is. I think they were more scared to attack the basket than they would have been if DeAndre Jordan was in there. I thought he held on the perimeter much better than DeAndre Jordan is capable of. And to me, like, the Raptors are for sure a matchup that it makes sense to play him. Of course, I would wish he was more polished at this point, but there's still things that I think he brings to the table that nobody else on the roster really does.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I like immediately he came in the game and it was like, oh shit, like he's not going back in. There's
Yeah,
no
the
chance. But they
4.4 seconds.
yeah, it was pretty rough. But it was, he figured it out. And that's kind of part of the experience. He figured it out. I thought he played well. There's just a couple things that stick out, like loose balls, offensive rebounds. Like there's no one else on the team that does that kind of thing. He does that consistently. And he's, like you said, effort guy. Energy on a team that doesn't have a lot of energy. And that's why I'm saying, like, with that second unit between him and Thybulle, if you have them coming off the bench, like there's just a lot of like chaos. And defensively, that's never bad or not usually bad. So, and the Sixers could use that. So, something where it kind of seems like hopeful, like wishful thinking at this point, because it doesn't seem like that's the plan that they have in place going forward. But, Doc clearly saw that DeAndre Jordan can't play against Toronto, and it was evident enough for him to actually take action and keep DeAndre Jordan on the bench, which is something we haven't seen from Doc. So at least he was able to do that. And if they are playing them in a series, I could see that being the effort or, the decision they make is to kind of buy into the chaos and the craziness that the Raptors ensue, buy into it and kind of attack fire with fire. And I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised that he went with Paul Reed. I didn't expect it to
Me
happen.
too.
I guess bullying works. I guess Sixers Twitter stays undefeated on bullying Doc Rivers into making decisions and the Sixers making decisions. So credit to us, I guess. But
Yeah.
I was happy to see him get some run. It was cool to see him out there. I hope it continues. And I agree. I think it's necessary in the playoffs with the Raptors specifically.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, we're going to cut this short because we got to go right into this Nik Stauskas interview. You guys got like 20 great minutes of an interview with Sean and our guy Sauce Castillo. So definitely go out and enjoy that. Before we go, check out Sean at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSPern17, the pod at PickSwap Pod. Check out the YouTube. And definitely make sure to check out BetUS. Use our code PickSwap at login for risk-free up to $500 and enjoy the interview.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap Podcast. I'm here today doing something a little different with a special guest, the guy that was drafted 8th overall in 2014, the 19th all-time Sixers franchise record for made three-pointers, Nik Stauskas. Nik, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? I appreciate you having me on here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Super thankful for you coming on. So to start out with, you came to the Sixers at a very interesting time in franchise history, all about the process, very widely critiqued, controversial. What were your expectations coming to Philadelphia, and did they live up to this?
To be honest, I didn't really have many expectations coming into Philadelphia. Like after my rookie year, when I got traded there, I very much was aware of the situation in terms of like, it being the process and even just looking at the roster at that time, I didn't even know all the players on the roster. So I knew that it was going to be a developmental phase for all of us. And like, at that time, we didn't really have any guys over 21, 22 years old. So we were super young, super inexperienced. But You know, I enjoyed my time there. You know, Philly was my longest tenure with any team. Like I was there for 3 seasons, and I created some great friendships on and off the court. And even throughout the losing, you know, we were still able to have fun. Like I said, we had such a young group that, you know, at times, even though it was, you know, we were struggling, you know, we kind of embraced the situation we were in and just tried to make the most of it. And, you know, still to this day, some of those guys that were on that team, whether, you know, TJ, Robert Covington, like they're some of my closest, you know, friends that I have in the league. So I definitely cherish those relationships and those, like, you know, those times that we shared together.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear too. And it's interesting to me. It is so criticized, obviously, because of the losses and the record and everything. But just watching the Sixers back then and you on the team at that time, there was something just like pure and fun, just the way everybody was competing and playing. How did you feel about like the culture in general of the team or the effects of building at that point?
You know, the culture was good. The problem for us really is, you know, especially my first year there, which was 2015, 2016. You know, we were so young that we didn't know how to close games. And, you know, I would say probably 15, 20 games that season where, you know, we go into the fourth quarter with, you know, a 2 or 3 point lead. And, you know, even in the last couple of minutes, you know, we're up 2 or 3 points. And then, you know, we would just find a way to lose games. And like, as a competitor, that's always frustrating because, you know, losing's tough for all of us. But I feel like just that situation that we were in made it tougher. Just, you know, knowing how close we were to kind of like getting over the hump, but not being able to reach it. And you know, this was obviously before we had Ben out there, before we had Joel out there. So, you know, it really was a bunch of role players trying to figure it out on our own at such a young stage of our career. But like I said, you know, we cherish those moments, and, you know, I was able to build some good friendships, and more than anything, as a young guy, like, you just gain experience, you know, getting to play through mistakes, getting to play in those, you know, late game scenarios, you know, where you're down to or up to. They're valuable for any player. So nonetheless, I think we all, you know, we all enjoyed having that opportunity to go prove ourselves and play in those situations.
Gotcha. And a guy you brought up there was Joel Embiid. Obviously, making mainstream news for the performances he's put on this year and just the star he's developed into. He was drafted in 2014, and you were there for the first 2 seasons of him being actually on the court. What was it like the early kind of the process of Joel joining the team and obviously the unique aspects surrounding him?
Yeah, I think, and again, I don't, you know, I'm not around as much now with Joel, but from afar, it seems like he's like really matured, in a way, and he's just like, you know, earlier in his career, he was like so vocal on Twitter, and he was always like joking around with people, and he's definitely, I feel like he's become a little more serious about things, which is good to see. I mean, it's just the maturity of any player. But yeah, like, you know, I feel like when Joel first came in, he was so naturally talented, so, you know, big and strong. And at that point, he wasn't thinking the game. He was just going out there and playing off of pure instincts or whatever. So you could see that raw talent or whatever. And like, for me now, it's cool to, you know, fast forward 6 years later and to see him like put it all together in terms of like, he may win the MVP this year. And you're like, damn, like he really figured it out mentally and physically. Like, he's been able to overcome all the naysayers that, you know, said that he was always hurt and, you know, he wasn't going to be healthy enough to play. Like, he overcame that, and just the mental side of things in terms of like being able to lead a team and have that kind of poise, and that maturity that he shows now. Like, it shows growth, and, you know, I'm proud of him for sure, because he's come a really long way to get to this point. And, you know, from someone who is like so goofy and so like laid back early on in his career, to see what he's become now, it's fun, and I'm proud of him, and happy for him as well. He deserves this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Head coach Brett Brown at the time I mean, obviously did such a unique situation as a coach to manage all that. And I think he's one of the few guys that would have been able to handle it as well as he did. What was your experience being coached by Brett and your thoughts on him?
I love Coach Brown, and you know, I think there's not many coaches that could have been able to, you know, properly coach that team for that many years, going through the situations that we had gone through. And I know for him, like, there was probably a lot of days where he wanted to pull his hair out and he was super frustrated, but he always came in with a smile on his face and was upbeat and was always trying to rally us and, you know, get us to buy in. And I think he did a great job of that. You know, obviously it in the long run didn't work out for him, and the franchise decided to go in a different direction in terms of coaching. But I cherish my time with him, and still to this day, he was one of my favorite coaches I've played for. Really enjoyed my time with Brett Brown. I got nothing but good things to say about him. So, I know most of the guys on the team feel the same. Most of the guys from the process days feel the same way. Like, he gave us, opportunity, which as a young guy is all you can ask for. And he encouraged us, gave us confidence, all those different kind of things. So I definitely love him.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I was a big Brett Brown fan as well. Hope he gets another chance somewhere soon. A question I've been dying to ask you for a while. How did the nickname Sauce Castillo happen?
That happened my rookie year when I was in Sacramento. And it was during a game, there was a closed captioning error, and I hit a 3-pointer. And instead of it saying Nik Stauskas for 3, it said Sauce Castillo for 3. And for whatever reason, that was like the autocorrect or mistake that was made. And I guess the fans just ran with it. Like, it became kind of like one of those viral things on Twitter where like people took a screenshot of it, and then I don't know, it just stuck and people kept calling me it. And then, next thing I know, I'm like only Sauce. So still to this day, like when I'm back in Philly and like people see me on the street, like I don't think anyone calls me Nick. Like Philly fans will only call me Sauce. So if the people like it, I'm all for it.
Yeah, totally awesome nickname. To fast forward a little bit from your time in Philly, you recently made some news, set a franchise record for the Grand Rapids Gold by scoring 57 points in a game on 11 of 15 shooting, and also followed up the next night with a 43-point performance, which I think is just as impressive as well. So what was it like your time in the G League and just this overall performances in general?
Yeah, it was so I played in the G League the last 2 seasons, and it was definitely I would say it was a positive experience for me. And I'm a little bit, a lot of guys kind of spend time in the G League like earlier in their career, and for me it's kind of come towards like my late 20s, as a chance to kind of get back into the league. And it was definitely tough at times, but for me personally, I feel like there was a lot of positives to take away from it, especially in terms of just gaining confidence and being able to just like play freely, and not necessarily have to like be worried about a shot going in or out or being taken out the game because I did this. And for me, it gave me a chance to kind of like gain my confidence back and just play basketball again. And that's something that I didn't always get to do in the NBA, in terms of whether when I was on the court, my role was more to kind of like, space the floor and like stand in the corner and like, be one of those guys, or, just sometimes not getting the opportunity to play at all. Like, as a player, it's tough to kind of find your rhythm when, you're not getting those opportunities. So in the G League, like playing for Jason Terry this year, it was, he gave me a lot of confidence. He gave me a lot of opportunities on the court. And over the course of this season, I just found myself getting more and more comfortable out there, in terms of like finding my spots and knowing, where my opportunities were going to come from. And then, I think it was first game in March, where we had Isaiah Thomas for maybe like the previous 3 or 4 games with us, and IT was going on a tear in the G League as well. Like he was putting up 40 balls and whatnot. And the first game of March, IT had just got called up to Charlotte, I believe. And so all of a sudden there was like this big chunk of shots or possessions that, he had been kind of using that were kind of up for grabs. And it was one of those things where the game started and the team was going under some dribble handoffs and some ball screens. And I think in the first 2 minutes, they went under 3 separate dribble handoffs. And each time I stopped behind, shot a 3 and hit it. And it's just one of those things, like as a player, you make your first 3 threes in the first 2 minutes. You're like, all right, I got to go in tonight. And I kind of just fed off of that. And my teammates were, kept finding me that game. And next thing I knew, like, start of the first quarter, I had like 30 something. And I was like, all right, well, shoot, maybe tonight's my night. Like, I just got to keep going with it. And then, like you said, the next night, kind of just playing off that same thing, just in my head, just being like, hey, I'm in a great rhythm now. I feel good. Let's just keep it going. And it was a crazy 48 hours because it, in like some ways, like changed my life. I'd been out of the league for 3 years. And, in some senses felt like, man, maybe I'm not going to ever get back, because I I'd been playing well throughout the G League season this year, and just I got a 10-day with Miami earlier in the year, but still it wasn't really, as much interest as I would have liked. And, having those 2 games back to back obviously kind of, opened some eyes in terms of, my performance that year. And, thankfully I was able to lock down a deal with the Celtics, but just crazy how, you never know when your time is coming in terms of these opportunities and when things are going to kind of come full circle. And for me, it happened to be those 2 games where, years of hard work and training and whatever kind of like all came together in one moment. Which is, sometimes hard to find in life. Sometimes you go years kind of like waiting for, that 1 degree where things kind of tip the other way. And for me, that's kind of when it was. So I'm happy I stuck with it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And very cool to see you open up like that. Congratulations on the deal with the Celtics, a 2-year deal. What has it been like getting settled in Boston? And is it difficult kind of at this stage of the season finding a way to find your stride?
It's been great. It's been great being with this team, especially just the timing of when I came in. After trade deadline, the team had, shaken things up a little bit in terms of moving some players and bringing you guys in. And just from what the guys have told me, that just the chemistry and the whole vibe in the locker room has kind of changed up over the last 2 months. So just as I came in, the team started going on a pretty big winning streak, and they've kind of never looked back since. So, I think since I've got here, we've only lost maybe like 3 or 4 games, and the team's just playing incredible basketball right now. So for me, it's been fun to watch this, but coming in late into the season, the rotation, we've run probably an 8 or 9 guy rotation depending on the game. And right now I'm not in that rotation. So for me, coming in, the challenge is like every day, just, keeping myself as ready as possible in practice, and like, continue to play 3-on-3 in practice, and, keeping myself as sharp as possible, just because you never know when those opportunities are going to come, especially in the playoffs. But, but yeah, as of now, man, we're playing some incredible basketball as a team. The defense has been like the number one thing that stood out to me in terms of, guys like Marcus Smart on the perimeter, just hounding the other guards and making things tough for them. And then, having a back line of Rob Williams and Al Horford, and just, seeing this team rotate and communicate on defense. It's, by far the best defense that I've been a part of in terms of teams that I've played on. So that's been kind of like the main thing that I've noticed as I've been here. And, even on offense too, guys like, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum just really playing at a superstar level, the both of them right now. So everyone's playing with a lot of confidence coming into playoffs. The team's kind of firing on all cylinders and clicking at the right time. So I think we're all very excited to see how far we can go in this postseason run. These last 2 years, it kind of feels like the West and the East, things are like way more open than they have been like the past like 8 to 10 years, maybe, as there's always kind of been like clear favorites. So I think that mentality for all of us is right now, like, why not us? Why not us come out the East and play for an NBA championship? So next 2-3 months are going to be very exciting for us.
Yeah, definitely. And Celtics are playing some terrific basketball, like you said. It's been crazy from the start of the year till now, just how much things have shifted in terms of stylistically, and the results are showing that as well. For you specifically, just kind of, obviously you still have plenty more to go in your career, but to this point, what are some of the biggest takeaways just being around the NBA, being around professional basketball in general, and your thoughts on that?
I guess over the last couple of years, the thing that I've realized more than anything is like, it truly is the best job in the world. Playing professional basketball at this level, it's unmatched. It's the best job in the entire world. And it's very easy to take it for granted, which I have at many points throughout my career. And over the last couple of seasons, being out of the league and then having to work, harder to get back in, it's, even in this current role of not being in the rotation and, watching games from the bench, I truly do have a new appreciation for things and just holding one of these 450 jobs, because you start to realize how replaceable we all are. There's a select group of guys at the very top, whether, it's Jason Tatum or Joel Embiid or, Steph Curry, LeBron, Kevin Durant, you name it. Those guys are talents that are, far superior than the rest of the league. But, once you go down that short list of guys, you start realizing that everyone's very interchangeable, and if not interchangeable, replaceable. And that's where, you start to find the beauty in, not just making it to the NBA, but how can you maintain that position year after year after year. And as I'm now in my eighth year of my career, it's really started to hit me in terms of, how precious these opportunities and jobs are. So, for me, I'm super grateful to be in this position. And now that I'm back in, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I want to do everything I possibly can to keep myself in this position of, playing for championships, playing in the playoffs, and playing meaningful minutes. That's, like you said, hopefully I still have a long career ahead of me, and there's still so many things that personally, I would like to achieve and experience. So I'm really grateful to be back. But like, yeah, I think my journey throughout the league has just really shown me that, not to take these opportunities for granted, because, it's easy to sit here and not be happy with, maybe not playing or not playing as well as you want to. But the realization that these jobs are so hard to come by, and they're the best jobs in the entire world. They're, we play basketball, like a game that we grew up playing for fun. We get, paid to do it at this level. There's nothing like it. So that's probably the perspective that's changed for me the most over this time.
Gotcha. That's awesome to hear, and very cool to see your perspective on all that. Super grateful for you coming on. Do you have any final words on what's next with Nik Stauskas?
No, hopefully I can hopefully I can win a ring here this year. That'd be kind of a crazy turn of events in terms of starting the year in the G League and then, winning a championship. But no, I'm super excited to be a part of this team here, and in terms of the playoffs moving forward. I appreciate you having me on, and I always have love for for all of Philly. I live in Philadelphia still in the off season. Me and my wife, we live there, so Philly's become home for me, and I still have love for all Philly fans. And so it really means a lot for you to have me on here. And, I would say trust the process, but those days are all over. And like at this point, I don't think I can say trust the process, because who knows, we might be seeing you guys in the playoffs.
Very true. I will always live by trusting the process, no matter how far we go down the line. But for real, thank you so much for coming on. Philly, always appreciate your time here. You were always a fan favorite, always somebody that we've rooted for. And it's great to see you doing well in the league. So thanks again for coming on, and see you guys next time on the Pick Swap Podcast.